skill set was that you brought? Was it great intellect, great drive, great leadership?
All of that.
All of that. Let's talk about golf.
Tiger Woods you could see coming from way back.
In basketball, you had somebody named Michael Jordan.
Everybody wanted him.
If I wore those shoes, I wouldn't be jumping higher, right?
I think you might.
Really? When you give a $400 million gift or a $500 million gift, do you actually write a check out? Is it hard to write that check? Or
Yes.
what would you say is the most favorable memory you have?
I kind of look at Nike as my work of art, if you will.
Would you fix your tie, please?
Well, people wouldn't recognize me if my tie was fixed, but okay. Just leave it this way. All right. I don't consider myself a journalist, and nobody else would consider myself a journalist. I began to take on the life of being an interviewer, even though I have a day job of running a private equity firm. How do you define leadership? What is it that makes somebody tick? I've worn your shoes for many years, and
You
now
look
I
great.
finally get a chance to talk about them, but we'll talk about my shoes a little bit later. When you first started the company in, I guess, 1962, around then, you knew nothing about shoe design, you didn't know a lot about management, and you didn't have any money. So today, the company is now worth roughly a market capitalization of about $100 billion, revenues of about $30 billion, 62,000 employees. Did you ever imagine, when you first started this company, so in the early 60s, that it could ever be what it became?
Sometimes when I get that question, I say, we're exactly on plan. But with you, I can't be a smart ass.
But you mean that wasn't an original question? I thought that was the first person ever asked that. Okay.
No, but it's, yeah, it's been a ride that really nobody could foresee. That when we started out, the total branded athletic shoe sales in the United States were about $2 billion. So last year we did 9. And so based on the original year, we're 450% market share. So it's, you know, we took advantage of the running boom, which became a jogging boom, which became a fitness boom, and we've benefited from all of that.
Would you say the company benefited more from being a good marketing company or a good technology company? In other words, having a better product or having better marketing, or a combination of both?
Well, what I've always said is we're a marketing company, and the product is our most important marketing tool.
And the skill set that you brought to it, what would you say the skill set was that you brought? Was it great intellect, great drive, great leadership? What would you say
All
it
of
was?
that.
All of that. in equal amounts.
No, if there's one thing, it's been I've been pretty good at evaluating people, and that was one of the things that I wanted to get through, and I hope did come through in the book, was how valuable those early you know, partners were, my fellow employees, my teammates. They were terrific. And
Speaking of that book, here it is.
Yeah.
Now, Shoe Dog. Now, I must confess, I didn't, before I read the book, I didn't know what a shoe dog was. For those who are watching, what is a shoe dog?
Well, in 25 words or less, a shoe dog is somebody that really loves shoes, and that was me. That I was a runner. There's no such thing as a ball in the mile. That all you really care about are the shoes, and so that became important to me, and it's been with me ever since.
Now, you're from Oregon.
Yep.
And I think I read that the first fossil we have of a shoe that ever existed is 9,000 years old, and it came from Oregon. So do you take that as a special sign that it was designed for you to start this company in Oregon?
Well, I haven't really thought of it that way, but I'll take it.
Okay. You grew up, your father was a newspaper editor, and when you wanted a summer job once, he told you he wouldn't hire you. Why did he not hire you?
Well, he knew me pretty well, but no, that there were 2 major newspapers in Portland at the time, the Journal, which he was publisher of that, and he wouldn't hire me, so I went across the street to the Oregonian and applied for a job and got it. So I worked there for 3 summers.
Okay, so you in high school you were an athlete and you ran, but were you a superstar athlete or were you an average athlete, or what would you say?
I was a little better than average, but I was certainly not a superstar.
But you got a scholarship to go to the University of Oregon?
No, I did not. I was a walk-on.
Or a run-on, I guess.
A run-on, okay.
A run-on. So your best time, as I remember, was 4 minutes and 10 seconds for a mile.
4:13, but that's
4:13.
close enough, yeah.
Okay, for 4:13, I gave you 3 seconds.
That's
okay.
right. I should have taken it.
All right. So suppose I told you today that you had these choices. You could either have built Nike or run a 3.56 mile. Which would you have preferred?
356 mile or Bill Nike?
Yes.
I'll take Nike.
Okay.
But I did pause.
All right. Okay. All right. Okay. So you lettered in 3 years, and then afterwards you went into the Army. And after a year in the Army, then you served in the reserves for a number of years. You went to business school at Stanford. So how did you happen to pick Stanford as a place to go to business school?
Well, it was and is a good school, and I got admitted.
Okay. All right. So you got admitted, and then in the class you had there was a class on entrepreneurship.
Yeah, the professor was really a dynamic professor and an inspirational professor, and he had you write a paper, which was your term paper, which was mostly what your grade would be, and you were supposed to attach yourself to a small business in the Bay Area or make up a small business, and he said, make sure you write about something you know. So most of my classmates wrote about some electronics project, which was beyond me, but I remembered my old track coach playing with shoes. And I was one of the guinea pigs with the shoes he played with, so I was sort of quite aware of the process. And it just didn't make sense to me at the time that running shoes should be made in Germany, which were dominating the world's markets. And so I said they should be made in Japan, and maybe Japan can do to German shoes what Japan did to German cameras. And so that was the premise. And I worked pretty hard on the paper, and the professor liked it, so that was the beginning.
Did you get an A on it? Or?
I did, yes.
Okay. So, all right, so then you graduated. And then, despite this great paper, no shoe company hired you, and you didn't then have the big Silicon Valley venture capital world, so you didn't get a job there. You went back to your home, and you became an accountant. Is that right? So, is that exciting for you to be an accountant?
Well, no, I didn't ever plan to be an accountant for 50 years, but I talked to a lot of people about what I should do, and I was kind of a finance major at Stanford, and they said there really is no such thing. You should, get your CPA certificate, and it'll be a great education, put a floor into your earnings, and so that's what I did.
Okay, but you also, before you really did that, you went by yourself on a trip around the world?
I started out with another guy, and he got waylaid by a girl in Hawaii, so I went on alone. I didn't have that problem.
Well, when you were in Japan, did you not stop in to see a shoe manufacturer?
Yeah, that was part of the idea that inspired by the paper that I wrote, that I would call on Japanese shoe manufacturers to see about importing their shoes into the United States. And I only called on one, and they were enthusiastic, and so it began.
You came back, and they started shipping you shoes to a company that you had named Blue Ribbon. Where did the name Blue Ribbon come from?
First place. But they asked me, what's the name of your company? I had to come up with something.
So you called it Blue Ribbon. All right, so they started shipping you shoes, and so your job was to then sell these shoes. So as I understand, you had a green Valiant, and you would put them in the trunk, and you would go around to track meets and sell the shoes. Is that what you did?
That's what I did.
And at that time, you had no vision of building a great global company. You were just trying to...
Well, I thought it was the start, and we could be bigger.
Okay.
I didn't, obviously, as I said earlier, nobody expected to be as big as it is.
But at some point, they began to be competitive with you. So you began to build your own company called Nike. And you needed a symbol of the company, and I guess somebody came up with this whoosh.
That's
so,
right.
You paid $35 for that?
Yeah, it was a graphic arts student at Portland State who needed money.
Okay.
And we said, we'll pay you $2 an hour to practice, to get some designs, and she spent 17 and a half hours on that.
Wow, okay, well, so $35, that's pretty good, okay. So...
it did have a happy ending, I hope you had that.
You gave her some stock.
When we went public, we gave her 500 shares of stock, and she has not sold a single share, and it's over $1 million now.
Wow, that's pretty good. So you began your own company eventually after you parted ways with the Japanese company. Did you actually design the shoes yourself, or were you the person who figured out what the shoes were going to look like?
Well, we were in a hurry. We had, it reminds me of, they asked John Kennedy how he became a hero, and he said, it's easy, they sank my boat.
Right.
That, when Tiger just basically gave us an ultimatum that said, either sell us 51% of your company at book value, or we're going to set up other distributors no matter what this piece of paper says. So that kind of gave us an idea that we maybe better change manufacturers.
Okay.
So we were in a hurry, and the first shoes, yes, that I did in an office in Tokyo, Japan over the course of a weekend.
Well, I Can you reveal this secret? If you actually have better shoes, can you run faster, or it really doesn't make that much difference?
I think shoes are key. We still believe in the mile run, lighter is better and makes a difference. I mean, obviously, if you try to run a mile in a pair of dress shoes, as an example, you're not going to run as fast as you are in a pair of 4-ounce cleats. In the old days, when I was running at the University of Oregon, we had a lot of canvas upper training shoes. You'd go out for a 6-mile run and you'd come back and your feet were bloody. So it matters.
So when you started your company, Nike, the dominant companies were German, Adidas and Puma. Were they happy with you coming along, and did they kind of try to get you out of business? Were they?
Oh no, they kind of didn't worry too much about us. So that until it was too late, that we kind of snuck up on them.
In basketball, you had somebody named Michael Jordan as a basketball player you've heard of, right?
I've heard of him. When he started wearing the shoes, we made him really dramatic. David Stern did us a huge favor. He banned it in the NBA. And so we ran a big ad that says banned in the NBA, and every kid wanted the shoe then.
When you wear his shoes, do you jump higher? I mean, if I wore those shoes, I wouldn't be jumping higher, right?
I think you might.
Really? Okay, I want to go get some. There was a University of Oregon runner, Steve Prefontaine, who was a legendary track star, and you became close to him. How did you get him to wear your shoes?
We worked at it and worked at it and worked at it. That obviously that he had worn Adidas his whole life, but he was right there in Eugene, and we had a small office in Eugene, and the guy that ran the office became his brother practically, and ultimately convinced him to switch to Nike, and he was really our first real prominent track and field athlete.
You went after others, and
Sure.
how hard is it? You have to pay them to use your shoes, or they just like it so much they just use the shoes?
They all just like it so much they wear them.
Really?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, obviously, if they're good enough, why they demand an endorsement fee from us or whoever they're going to wear. And you know, I mean, other than I mean, the one that comes immediately to mind is Michael Johnson at the '96 Olympics in Atlanta, wore the gold shoes, which lifted us significantly.
And you made those shoes. Early on, you had, was it John McEnroe was one of your players? So he, from time to time, would lose his temper. And did that reflect poorly on your shoe, or you didn't care about his image? His image was, he was a great tennis player, but sometimes he would lose control, some people might say. And that didn't bother you, or did it actually help sales?
The latter.
Oh, it did. Okay.
No, that he had a bad temper. But I always remember that you know, Arnold Palmer had a bad temper too, but he would keep it in control. But you could see him standing there ready to lose it. John went over. He was Arnold Palmer that didn't keep it in control. But he was probably the most exciting player of his era, and in private was a perfect gentleman. It was just that he was so intense it would get away from him sometime. But he was unique in that he lost his temper a lot, but when he played Bjorn Borg, and I think he played him 25 times, he never lost his temper once.
Wow. Well, I didn't really know John McEnroe as a tennis player, but when I practiced law early on, the office next to mine was held by a man named John McEnroe Sr. And he always told me his son was a high school tennis player and was really good. And of course, you always roll your eyes when you hear this, but then I finally realized he was not exaggerating. So let's talk about golf. A man named Tiger Woods came along, and you signed him up relatively early in his professional career, I guess at the beginning of it. So was that hard to convince him to do this?
Tiger Woods, you could see coming from way back that he had won 3 U.S. juniors, and then went on to win 3 U.S. amateurs in a 6-year span from the time he was like 15 till 20. And he would play occasionally in the Portland area, and we'd always invite him and his father out to lunch. So we were working on that for probably 3 years before we actually signed him.
And when you signed him up, he then wears your shoes exclusively, but you also then began to make golf equipment as well. And so you made golf balls and golf equipment, but now you're out of that business. Is that because you just want to focus on shoes and not other types of equipment?
It's a fairly simple equation. that we lost money for 20 years on equipment and balls, and we realized next year wasn't going to be any different.
Okay, so you got out of that. But let me ask you, for a while, you were doing casual wear as well. In other words, there was the aerobics effort and there was casual wear. You decided to try to make athletic shoes into a casual kind of shoes. Did that work as well?
Well, sportswear in shoes and clothes is still a fairly significant part of our business.
And so, in other words, it's not just for athletes. You try to now design shoes, and you have been for some time, for people who are just wearing them casually. Mm-hmm. And so you like it when people are wearing suits and wearing your shoes as well.
You look great.
Okay. And now, do you ever wear anything other than Nike shoes?
No.
No, okay. So when you go to you wear a tuxedo or something, you wear Nike shoes as well?
Black Nike shoes.
Okay. So let me ask about basketball. In basketball, you had somebody named Michael Jordan as a basketball player you've heard of, right?
I've heard of him.
And so was it hard to sign him up? And why was his shoe so successful, became the most successful shoe ever in the athletic world?
Yeah, it was hard to sign him up because everybody wanted him. And we won that bid. We won that war. And
was it on your personality, or was
clearly.
it clearly? Okay. not money. It's just personality.
No, we offered pretty good, but we had a lot of good players. We didn't have really great players, and we thought he had the chance to be that. He was obviously way better than we ever could have imagined. But yeah, when he started wearing the shoes, we made them really dramatic. They were red and black and white. They had three main colors, and of course, he was a very exciting player. He jumped and he was quick and he shot. He did everything well, and he was handsome and he spoke well. And then the shoe was distinctive looking, and David Stern did us a huge favor. He banned it in the NBA. And so we ran a big ad that says banned in the NBA, and every kid wanted the shoe then.
But now Michael Jordan hasn't played in the NBA for more than a decade, and yet the shoe is still maybe your best-selling basketball shoe. Why is that?
When Michael Jordan retired from the game of basketball, we were selling about $700 million worth of Jordan product. And it's now become a brand, and we're selling over $3 billion worth of Jordan product. And there are some kids really know who he was, and he's all-time great. But some kids don't even know who he was. It became a brand. It went from an endorsement into a brand.
So when you wear his shoes, do you jump higher? I mean, if I wore those shoes, I wouldn't be jumping higher, right?
I think you might.
Really? Okay, I want to go get some. Let's talk about your philanthropy for a moment. When did you realize that you just can't take it with you and you better to give it away?
Well, it was fairly late in the process because I kept thinking it's all going to disappear. that I've often said, if this is a dream, don't wake me.
So when you give a $400 million gift or a $500 million gift, do you actually write a check out, or do you just kind of wire the money? And is it hard to write that check, or?
Yes.
Because of the success of the company, you are one of the wealthiest men in the United States and one of the wealthiest men in the world. You're also one of the biggest philanthropists in the United States and the world. So let's talk about your philanthropy for a moment. When did you realize that you just can't take it with you and you better to give it away? At what point in your life do you say, I've got to do something with this other than just hold on to it?
Well, it was fairly late in the process because I kept thinking it's all going to disappear. that I've often said, if this is a dream, don't wake me. But yes, as the years went on, it seemed more real. And so yeah, as I got older, I said, you can't take it with you. But I've wanted to focus on 3 or 4 main charities rather than try and spread it across the board.
To the University of Oregon, your alma mater, you've given a couple $100 million relating to athletics, but you've also given $500 million recently for a science center. So why did you decide to be so generous to your alma mater?
Well, and basically, I kind of have to laugh because two of the great entrepreneurs, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, basically dropped out of college when they were freshmen. And my story is the exact opposite. The company Nike is really a result of 2 universities, the University of Oregon, which started the idea of running shoes, and then Stanford, which had the entrepreneurship education. So I've tried to give back to those 2 schools. Those have been 2 of my main contributions. And then the other one that means a lot to me is OHSU, which has a very outstanding leader in their cancer research area.
So the Oregon Science Health University.
Oregon Health Sciences, yeah.
Okay, you gave him $500 million for cancer research. You've also given recently $400 million for a new scholarship fellowship program at Stanford University. It's called the Knight Hennessy Fellows. So when you give a $400 million gift or a $500 million gift, do you actually write a check out, or do you just kind of wire the money? And is it hard to write that check? Or
Yes.
Okay.
No, it's a little bit of this. Some of it's been given in stock, and some of it's paid out over a few years.
you had two sons. One died tragically in a scuba diving accident, and in his honor, you've done some things. And how have you tried to memorialize him in that way?
Well, he was a big sports fan, and so we gave some money to the University of Oregon for their new basketball arena, which was named after him.
Today, what is left for you to accomplish, and what do you want to accomplish that you haven't accomplished?
Well, I've looked back in this last couple of years, and I'm pretty happy with what's happened in those years, and particularly around the philanthropy that I've been able to do. And there'll be more going ahead, but I take my time in thinking about those things, and I'm feeling good about things right now.
So do you consult with your wife on that?
Absolutely. That's final approval.
Now, where did you meet your wife?
Well, I taught 2 years at Portland State, and she was one of my students.
Okay, and she was a good student?
Yeah, she was actually quite a good student. Yes, she's a better student than I was.
It's unrealistic to make these kind of products in the United States, you would say, these shoes or those kind of things.
It is as we speak, but the manufacturing technology is changing very, very rapidly. So, you know, out there somewhere, 5 or 10 years, there will be some shoe manufacturing done in the United States, which is, I suppose, the good news. The bad news is there won't be a lot of jobs. It will be very automated.
You were a runner for quite some time. I think up until the age of 70, you run. You never actually hurt your knees so much that you don't have any artificial knees or artificial hips.
I do not.
So how did you avoid all those problems by running so much and not having damage to your body? You were just a graceful runner, or good shoes?
Well, I didn't put too much strain on the knees because I don't have very much muscle mass. So though I was lucky that way. But yeah, I still get out and walk. When I was, I think, 70, when I was out for one of my runs, I got passed by a woman with a baby carriage, and I realized that maybe I should really quit trying to run and just walk.
Okay. The athletes you've met over the years, you've been involved with some of the most famous athletes. We've mentioned some: Tiger Woods, John McEnroe, Steve Prefontaine, Michael Jordan, among others. Are there any of them that stand out as the people that you would say are role models for youth, or you think all of them are? And which ones have you developed the closest personal relationship with?
Well, all the ones you mentioned I've liked a lot and know pretty well. They're all a little bit different. Is John McEnroe a role model? I would say, yeah, kind of, but a lot of people would disagree with that. But yeah, I think, but which one stands out more than the other? It just doesn't. I do really, and I really do look at them as my children, kind of. And who is your favorite child? You can't say that.
So, like when you got to know Tiger Woods, did he give you golf tips, or you don't play golf?
I do badly. He tried to give me a tip, but it didn't really work.
So the high point of your career, you would say, was when Nike went public, or when Nike came to the success it currently has? What would you say is the high point, the most favorable memory you have?
Oh, I just look at I kind of look at Nike as my work of art, if you will, and just the whole painting is what matters.
And let's talk finally about leadership. So leadership is not clear to people whether you're born with it, or you inherit it, or you kind of become a leader by education. What do you think makes a great leader?
Oh, they come in all shapes and sizes, don't they? That, you know, I mean, obviously, the Hollywood will purvey a leader as tall and handsome and strong-jawed. That a lot of times the real good leaders are just the opposite. That I think it's just people that, well, first of all, they got to want it, and but they come in all shapes and sizes, and I don't know that there's any one lesson.
Now, you are famous for wearing sunglasses, and I appreciate you're not wearing them at this interview, but is that because you're shy by nature? You just don't want people to see you, or?
No, well, basically, I wear contact lenses. It makes the sun bright, and the future's so bright, I wear them all the time.
Okay.